What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. Jesse Rubinoff, Donnovan Bennett, Andy McNamara, ahead of what should be just an amazing week 4 in the NFL. The first 3 weeks have given us a lot of what we expected, unpredictability, a lot of fun. Andy, before we get to the starts and sits, got to hear you're wearing the logo today. You got the banner behind you. We missed you last week. How was Cleveland, buddy?
Oh, missed you too, guys. It was great. I'll tilt it for you here. This is the 75th anniversary Browns banner. Got at the game right there.
Oh, really? That's the new
yeah,
edition.
that's the new one. So they're handing that out. So that was cool. Town was popping, and it was an exciting game. It was absolutely incredible. 26-6 Browns record. Myles Garrett I just felt bad for poor Justin Fields. Like, Matt Nagy, I guess does not want to be employed for very much longer, gentlemen, because that was ugly. But I'm glad the Browns came out with a win. Cleveland was rocking. It was amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good place to start. And I should tell the viewers, please hit us up on the YouTube chats, on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere. We want to answer your questions that you have ahead of week 4 in fantasy. That's a tough look for Justin Fields in week 1, but you mentioned him, Matt Nagy, taking a lot of heat based on the play calling. So, DJ, we do know now, we learned late last night, that Justin Fields will be under center again for the Chicago Bears. Is there any chance here? Is there any chance that the Bears learn from their mistakes last week and will give him a little bit more leeway when it comes to moving outside of the pocket, running, vertical passing, things that he's actually good at instead of getting sacked, DJ?
Things that are just basics in modern day offensive football. Listen, man, I don't know how you could put any faith in Matt Nagy at this point. First of all, we've seen this movie before with Mitchell Trubisky, so it's kind of like similar. But I would argue this is worth. I'm watching series right now, Dr. Death, and it's all about malpractice in the medical field and the surgeon who's basically just butchering patients. And I kind of feel like Matt Nagy is doing that right now to Justin Fields. Sacked 9 times. You mentioned it. Got him out of the pocket 4 times in the entire game. Hardly any RPOs. 5-man protections against a very good Cleveland Browns D-line. I just feel like he was set up to fail, and he did fail. He had like +1 in terms of net positive passing yards. He had a 6 QBR. Like these are stats that you expected to see a year ago when the Denver Broncos had to start a receiver at quarterback, not a first-round draft pick.
Yes.
So I even if they do improve, and it's helpful that the defense that they're facing is not nearly as good. But even if they do improve, they have to improve so much. So no, you don't want Justin Fields, even in a streaming situation. No, I'm not outside of, I suppose, Montgomery and Robinson. You don't want any Chicago Bears skills, and quite frankly, I don't think you want the Chicago Bears defense because they're going to be on the field a lot until this offense gets better.
Yeah, Andy, so it's more like DJ saying a wait-and-see approach when it comes to Justin Fields, because ultimately this could be the last week that we see him starting if Andy Dalton gets healthy or if he struggles. There were rumors that maybe even Nick Foles would be under center for the Bears. So is the proper approach here to just say wait and see on Justin Fields?
Yeah, guys, like try to avoid, and I'm not blaming Justin Fields. Super talented quarterback. Is Matt Nagy going to open things up a bit and let him perform? At least let him try to exploit his skill set for better or for worse, rather than just leaving him back there and just getting slammed like that. It was a disaster. So yeah, I'm fading on him. And guys, you know what? In one of my leagues, I have Allen Robinson. He's on my bench. I can't trust him. I'm not blaming Allen Robinson. This is not Allen Robinson's fault. This is Matt Nagy's fault. And I hate that I have to bench Allen Robinson because of it. So I'm trying to fade and stay away from all Bears. Montgomery, like you said, DJ, just get up. You probably don't have too much of a better option of an RB2 if you got him on your team. So you got to play him.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah.
You mentioned Robinson, and listen, we look. What are the numbers we look at when we're talking about evaluating receivers and where should we slot them, right? Targets, routes run. When your quarterback sacked 9 times, you could run 1,000 right. rather.
Yeah.
So that offense is a bit of a mess. So I am surprised to hear you benching Robinson, but I'm not surprised given what the game script looked
I
like
know.
the
I don't
last
want
time we
to,
saw the Bears.
Yeah,
but
you
I
don't
have
want
to.
to, but you just have to downgrade everybody in the Bears offense, it seems, while Justin Fields is under center. Or if Matt Nagy continues to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears and calling the plays. Okay, let's get to a couple notables who will not be playing today and will be suiting up. So Dalvin Cook is expected to play today. We saw Alexander Mattison have a big game last week, the bell cow, while Dalvin Cook was out nursing injury, but he is expected to play today. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey will be out, and that opens the door for Chuba Hubbard, the Canadian who 2 years ago went over 2,000 yards rushing in Oklahoma State in college. There were some people, and it was hot and cold, mixed reviews last week when he stepped in for McCaffrey, but no doubt he was getting the majority of the looks in the backfield. So, Andy, all right, what are you expecting for Chuba? Can owners plug him in as sort of a safe RB2 just based on the volume that he was getting last week when McCaffrey went down?
I think so. I think you can feel comfortable doing it. It's going to be a fun game against Dallas as well. Should be high octane offense, lots of points from both sides. And we have to remember, too, this is a bit of a different situation than we had last year when Mike Davis filled in, who size wise was a bit more comparable to Christian McCaffrey and filled in quite well. This is a
Mm-hmm.
full week of prep for Chuba Hubbard, who is a much different looking back, more closer to a Derrick Henry style build in size and girth than a Mike Davis or Christian McCaffrey. So I'm very interested to see how he's used, in what style, but the guy can catch out of the backfield. He can run. He's a big body. So I expect him to be used. But yeah, for expectations, let's set it at that RB2 level now and just see how he grows in that offense.
Love that. Let's get to some questions from the viewers. Jim wants to know on Facebook, Ryan Tannehill or Derek Carr today? And DJ, Tannehill is going to be working with a thinner roster in the receiving core, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, both out of the lineup today for the Titans. That's going to be a heavy dose of Derrick Henry. So in this case, you going Ryan Tannehill or Derek Carr?
Derek Carr. It's not close. And Derek Carr, based off of his performance thus far, has been close to a Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes like level. By some metrics, he's been even better. Tannehill was efficient when the Titans were struggling with their health at the receiver position in the second half. But you know that the game script is going to have a lot of Derrick Henry early and often. Tannehill might give you some extra balance in terms of him being an impact running the football, which is great for quarterbacks, which Derek Carr is not going to give you. But even with that, I want to stay away from Tannehill. And even in daily fantasy, I think the Titan that you want is Derrick Henry. He's going to be the most expensive, but in a week like this week, I think it's actually going to be worth it.
Yeah, Andy, when I just look at the Tannehill against Carr here, Carr's name really stands out because he's someone who in one QB leagues started the year on the waiver wire, and now people are starting to have to pay up a little bit to get his services. Do you expect what Derek Carr and the Raiders offense has suddenly become here through the first 3 weeks to continue, or is there going to be some regression for Derek Carr as the season wears on here?
Well, I think we have to wrap our heads around that Derek Carr is a pretty damn good quarterback. And it finally happened. And it took a while. Not everybody leaps into the league. And finally, he's hitting his stride. And what I like is these are not fluke statistics. These are not necessarily garbage statistics at all. He's averaging just under 400 yards. He's overall, guys, the 12th best fantasy player, not quarterback, player in all of football. The guy is taking what the defense is giving him, and then he's taking his shot. He's being very cerebral. He's his accuracy, just the whole thing, how that offense is coming together, I think is working out very well. And for DFS wise, I personally think you can get a value stack. I'm loving Derek Carr and Hunter Renfrow. Don't dump on Hunter Renfrow. PPR, that dude's in the 13 to 17 fantasy points. You can get a nice stack deal in what should be a bit of a shootout with Justin Herbert and the Chargers with Carr and Renfrow. So I'm all in with Derek Carr. I think he's going to do great.
Yeah, it just seems like with the Raiders offense, they suddenly have a lot of weapons at their disposal, and guys are beginning to take the next step. And whether it's Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow, obviously we know what Waller can do. Now Brian Edwards is coming up big in certain situations. So this Raiders offense is really starting to surprise people. And yeah, I agree. Derek Carr just looks like the real deal so far this season. Okay, Ariel Jacobs on YouTube asks, DJ, Chase Edmonds or Miles Sanders? It is a full PPR league. Now, Miles Sanders, obviously the Eagles last week going up against the Cowboys, straight up didn't run the ball. They just did not run the ball at all. They got behind and they didn't run it unless it was Jalen Hurts scrambling out of the pocket. So who do you like in this situation, Chase Edmonds or Miles Sanders?
So normally I would say Chase Edmonds. I think he's been the better player this year on the better offense. But for this week, I'm looking at matchups. And, Miles Sanders going up against the Chiefs, a defense that has struggled, not only defensively, struggled against the run. The Browns gashed them. The Ravens gashed them. Now, that's what those teams do to everybody. But even the San Diego Chargers, a team that throws to run the ball, Eckler had success being efficient on early downs running the football. So I see Miles Sanders being able to have similar success against the Chiefs, where the Cardinals haven't had success at all in any phase historically against the Rams. And, when you look at the fact that the Chiefs have taken Chris Jones and taken him from the interior and moved him to the exterior, which impacts their ability to stop the run. And Aaron Donald is a people eater in the middle of the Rams defense. I like Sanders in this spot more than Edmonds.
Andy, Chase Edmonds or Miles Sanders in this spot today?
Edmonds, I feel, gives you the safer floor. Like DJ was saying, and they don't run the ball. And if Jalen Hurts is getting the first look to run because of all his talent, I'm going to play it a little bit more conservative and say Edmonds, because I think he's going to safely give you 12, 13 fantasy points. That's going to be fine. That's not going to make or break your week. It's going to be, it's good. Sanders, I just don't see the ceiling upside necessarily when you have Gainwell lurking back there, when you have Scott, and when you have Hurts running around. So I think Sanders, he might be able to pop more, but I'm gonna go a little bit more conservative and stick with Edmonds in this situation.
Love it. Okay, moving on with questions here because a lot are coming in now, and I want to get to them. That is where we provide the value for you. So hit us up on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Marcus on YouTube asks, who should I start, Devin Singletary or Kenny Golladay? Giants a little bit banged up at receiving core. Sterling Shepard issues, Darius Slayton issues. So Kenny Golladay or Devin Singletary. We'll start with Andy.
Yeah, I think you got to go. with Golladay. I don't like it again, but when we look at the situations behind it, Saquon Barkley's averaging 3.4 yards per carry. He's still not 100%, and I'm not sure whether we're blaming the O-line or Barkley or a combination of both or play whatever. But Golladay, he came off the injured list. You got him and paid him for a reason. Follow the money. I think Golladay, this could be a bit of a coming out party for him to prove, because he's got that star mentality, and he hasn't liked that he's been limited. So this is his chance. I think you go Golladay.
DJ, one of the issues with Singletary now seems to be that Zach Moss suddenly is getting a lot of reps. I know it was always a timeshare, but Zach Moss is the one who's putting up fantasy points. So are you going Singletary or Golladay today?
Yeah, this is tough, especially when you look at the other Giants receivers that are injured, specifically Slayton, who runs a lot of similar routes as Golladay. And that's why I naturally would have leaned Golladay. I just think the Bills are going to be up. They're going to have the lead, and they're going to run and control the ball. So Galladay's been one of my biggest fantasy disappointments this far. So I'm going to actually say Singletary.
Love it. Okay, Derek on YouTube. Can I trust Deontay Johnson coming off of knee injury now? The alternative is Josh Jacobs, who's also banged up, or Golladay. Now, I want to begin just with the Steelers in the Deontay Johnson situation. We know now that Chase Claypool will not be playing in today's game, and the Steelers offense looks like a shell of their former selves right now. So, Andy, Derek, can I trust Deontay Johnson coming off the injury, Josh Jacobs, or Kenny Golladay?
The answer, I think, is no. That doesn't mean, though, that Deontay Johnson could still not be a good play. Ben Roethlisberger, he's got to retire after this year. That arm's done. However, we've seen in Ben Roethlisberger now 5-yard max type of completions. Deontay Johnson is that guy. So in PPR, I think it does make a lot of sense. I feel Golladay, again, like we just talked about, should have a lot of opportunity, but can we really trust Daniel Jones? I think I'd rather, even at this stage, just trust the quarterback IQ of Ben Roethlisberger over Daniel Jones. So I'll say Johnson. There's a lot of risk either way. If it's PPR, I will say Deontay Johnson. I think he's going to be able to have a lot of those targets funneled that don't go to Najee Harris today.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to point out to Derek. There's going to be risk basically any way you make a decision here. There's no clear-cut answer, but Deontay Johnson, Josh Jacobs, or Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm partial to running back, certainly. So the fact Jacobs is banged up and the fact that John Gruden is in love with Peyton Barber, apparently, makes this somewhat difficult. I'm going to say Johnson because Claypool not being in the lineup takes away, Big Ben's red zone target that he loves. So I'm going to say Johnson. I don't feel great about any of them. Hopefully, we're talking about, just your flex spot and your other spots are pretty solid. And this is just a boom or bust play for you.
Yeah, is it time to reevaluate the Steelers offense when it comes to everybody outside of probably Najee Harris, just because Najee continues to get he's a workhorse back there in the Steelers backfield. So, Deej, is it time to maybe look at who you own in terms of Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool when he's healthy, and say, hey, maybe the ceiling that I was expecting when I drafted these guys in my draft maybe is no longer attainable, and I have to say, it's a little bit down from where I wanted it.
Yeah, the issue with them is you never know which one is going to be on. They're all capable of going off. They're all super touchdown dependent. So unless you're a hardcore Steelers fan and you stacked a couple of them together and drafted a couple of those skills and are going to play them, most weeks together, and that's you're just going to say it might come out in the wash. Someone might go for 200, someone might go for 50, but at the end of the day, I'm going to get anywhere from 150, 250, receiving yards from a couple of these guys. Unless that's removed, the problem is you never really know. One, they're always questionable mid to close to the end of the week. So that's, part of the equation for me. But, how many people had Chase Claypool on their bench last year when he went off for 4 touchdowns? A lot.
That's right.
And so that's what scares me about the killer bees. And before you could say, well, listen, Steelers get off the bus throwing the football. They're airing it out. Like, no longer are they this ground and pan organization. Well, with Ben, that's not the case. They might throw a lot, but to Andy's point, not very far. And they're not staying on the field long enough to give you a lot of points. So I think they are a super match dependent, super dependent on who else is going on your roster, who's healthy, who's on a bye, and you can plug and play them, but they're not someone I'm starting and forgetting week in and week out. None of them are really, other than Harris, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, that's the NFL these days. You look at what the Steelers were able to accomplish only a couple of years ago, and Ben was throwing 40, 45 times a game. And the offense, you wanted every piece of it, right? You wanted everyone. You wanted the receivers. You wanted James Conner. You wanted Ben because he was airing it out. And now suddenly it's an offense that they look like, frankly, right now, the weakest team in the division. And obviously, when you look at Ben and what's transpired with his health and his arm and their inability to get the ball down the field, it might be a situation that you want to avoid. Okay, sticking with the questions. Trent on Facebook, half PPR league, Deebo Samuel or Corey Davis. Andy, I have a pretty sneaking suspicion of who you're going to go with in this question, Deebo Samuel or Corey Davis.
Yeah, can we trust anybody on the New York Jets? No. Arguably the least talented roster in all of football. It's a disaster. Now, Corey Davis, if you have to pick a guy off that team, I think he has all the passing touchdowns after they got shut out last week. Deebo Samuel for sure. Now, what concerns me, of course, is him and Brandon Ayuk, similar type of receivers. Ayuk popped into the, I believe, 12.5 fantasy points in PPR last week. Deebo, underneath that, Deebo, I still feel has more confidence of the quarterback and of the coaching staff. George Kittle, still a little banged up. He will play, apparently. So I would still, in this situation, whether Ayuk goes off or not, you are much safer with Deebo Samuel.
Teach.
I agree. I mean, you might feel a little bit about Davis because the rookie that everyone was excited about in New York, Elijah Moore, is hurt. So, maybe he gets a little bit more target share there. But there are many, players at the, let's say wide receiver 2 spot that I would like more than Deebo Samuel, specifically what's going on in their backfield. He's going to get a couple of touches, on end arounds and jet sweeps. He's their number one target reliably in the passing game outside of Kittle, who Andy mentioned is banged up. So yeah, give me, Deebo Samuel. He's a guy who should be starting for you week in, week out.
Okay, is there any credence to the hashtag revenge game for a guy like Corey Davis? Was on the Titans obviously for a number of years. I don't think he ever lived up to expectations in Tennessee. A lot was expected of him when he was drafted, but he goes back up against the Titans today, and I know that we should probably be avoiding, like Andy said, the Jets at all costs. But is Corey Davis at least the one usable receiver? I know Jamison Crowder is likely to play again today for the Jets. Is Corey Davis the one usable receiver that we can go to? Like I understand the struggles for the Jets.
Yeah, like revenge game. I think Corey Davis can want as much revenge as he wants. Zach Wilson gonna be, he'll give him the football. He can want revenge. He's not throwing it to himself, right? Like, okay. I would, again, try to avoid the Jets as much as possible. If you find yourself in a situation where, for whatever reason, you absolutely have to have a Jets player, then yes, Corey Davis is the one to go to based on volume, maybe garbage time. But I think this is really a game that the Titans are going to be able to get themselves back on track defensively, offensively. And I would just, I'm not expecting too much out of this team at all.
It's a shame to see what's transpiring with the Jets because new coach coming in, a lot of hype around Zach Wilson. We heard Tony Romo, what he said before the season, that he expected him eventually. Now, I know obviously there's still a long ways to go in his career, but eventually to get to that upper echelon of quarterbacks. But you look at this rookie quarterback group, and there have been a lot of struggles, and Zach Wilson is probably the headliner when it comes to that situation. So moving on with questions, Morgan on YouTube wants to know, flex Darrell Henderson Jr., Zach Moss, or Robert Woods, which is interesting because I think before the season, a lot of people wouldn't have put Robert Woods in that category. He was Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods almost 1A and 1B, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, DJ, for the Rams. It seems like Stafford and Kupp seem to have this mind meld going over in LA.
Yeah, I would still put Woods in that spot. Maybe take a look at Henderson Jr. As he's had a nice start to the year. But the way Sony Michel played last week, you expect him to get more usage in that Rams offense. Robert Woods is a really good football player who has had a down month. So, barring this trend continuing for another month, I still think he's someone you got to find a way to get in your lineup week in, week out.
Yeah, Andy, Robert Woods seems like an obvious buy low candidate here for fantasy owners, just based on the track record, and the Rams offense is humming along. Like I understand that right now Cooper Kupp is the one getting the headlines, but because the offense is so efficient, Matt Stafford's doing such a good job, it seems like at any moment the script could flip a little bit and it could be Robert Woods or Tyler Higbee or someone else in that Rams offense stepping up.
Yeah, and it's so disappointing for Robert Woods to start of this season. And yeah, Cooper Kupp is just blown up. It's wild. So out of those choices, Robert Woods, I still feel, I'm with Donnovan, I think it's the safest play. I think you can put him in and still have confidence that he will be a part of the game plan. Will it be this week? I'd rather take the chance on Robert Woods than those other two options.
Okay, Eric on YouTube wants to know. Now we're going back to the Robert Woods but I think the choices here are a little bit more competitive. Eric wants to know Robert Woods, Tyler Lockett, or Antonio Brown? Antonio Brown back in the lineup this week. We know what Lockett's been able to accomplish for the Seahawks. So, Andy, Woods, Lockett, or Antonio Brown?
Oh, that is more interesting. That is more interesting. I'm going to say Antonio Brown, and I say it because Lockett, who's had a great start to the year, him and DK Metcalf, Lockett will play. He's coming back. He's more healthy, but there's no Gronk with the Bucs. So the risk, of course, is you have Evans, Godwin, and Antonio Brown. The running game isn't an issue. Is it Cameron Brate goes off? Antonio Brown also played for a cup of coffee in New England. Tommy's his boy. I just expect Brady to feast on Belichick and show no mercy. So I think there's enough room for everybody to have a seat at the table. I'll take AB here.
Deej, answer that question, and then we got to talk Bucks Patriots because it's some people's Super Bowls. Let's face it. And I know the questions are streaming in, but we're going to need to know the fantasy implications, etc., of that game. But first, let's answer the question here: Robert Woods, Tyler Lockett, or Antonio Brown?
Yeah, so we talked about Woods. So, let's touch on Lockett. He's coming back from the hip injury. Tough matchup, though, against that Niners defense, specifically that Niners secondary. So I'm staying away. You mentioned it, revenge games, and the entire narrative. It's about, Tom coming back with Bill. What are the prop bets on whether or not they're going to shake hands at the middle of the field afterwards? Who gets the better of who? Remember, Antonio Brown didn't have the best ending in New England, and he's coming back as well. And if Tom Brady has a quote-unquote revenge game, it's going to be airing it out, and Antonio Brown will be theoretically one of the recipients of those balls. So it's not just Tom, and maybe if he's healthy, Gronk, it's AB. And speaking of which, Colin, super producer, has cropped so nicely, so you can't see it. But I've got the Tom Terrific Still Here T-shirt on
with the crown.
This with the crown on, like he's Biggie Smalls. This matchup to me is fascinating, and the ramifications are so vast. And is it revenge game? Tom goes in there with the better team. He's talking to his ex with his new boo by his side. Oh, N'Keal Harry is up. Great. Look at the receivers I've got now, Bill. Or is it Tom Brady's 4 worst performances were against the Lions? Coordinator, Matt Patricia. Against the Dolphins, coordinator, or head coach, I should say, Brian Flores. And 2 against the Bills, familiarity, same division. But the point is, nobody understands Tom and what bothers him, interior pressure, more so than Bill Belichick. Will this mean a difficult day for Tom? And Matt Patricia, because he was so bad in Detroit, he's back in New England as well.
Okay, I hear you. But did you hear Tom Brady's voice at his presser this week? He could barely speak. And what that says to me is he was just barking nonstop at his teammates. And this one means a little something extra to him this week. Andy, I know we do fantasy a lot of the time.
Barking at his dad and his trainer to stop
He's barking at everyone. He's barking at everyone. So, Andy, Bucks Patriots, I know we focus a lot on fantasy, but I do have to point out that the line this week is Bucks by 7. DJ mentioned the Patriots coaching staff knows Tom Brady better than anybody else, but ultimately Tom Brady is the one that's on the field, the one who has the ability to make the plays. What should we be expecting between the Bucks and Patriots tonight? Who's coming out on top?
Well, you mentioned it earlier, Jesse, that it has a Super Bowl feel. Apparently, tickets are selling at the price of Super Bowl tickets for this matchup. And let's not forget, Tom Brady is 68 yards away, passing yards away from breaking Drew Brees' all-time passing yard record. That's going to happen in New England. There are so many layers to this thing. I truly believe Tampa Bay is going to come in, and if this line was 10, I would take Tampa Bay too. I think Brady, he makes like revenge games and issues out of nothing, slighted out of nothing. This is the guy who just you want a lot with, but you want without a shadow of a doubt to prove, and it'll never be fully decided. And it was both ways, of course, who made who and all that. But he wants to put the exclamation point, look at me now, baby. And I feel the Bucks win by 10. I really do. I think it's a dominant performance. There will be 0 let up because Belichick would not let up if it was the other way. 0 let up and a stomping of New England by Tampa Bay.
Deej, I know
Well,
what you were saying
Andy,
about the coaching staff. Your pick.
no, I know. I just want to follow up, and I have the same pick, and here's why, Andy, because you mentioned, you'd be comfortable with the line at 10. You know who's hammering this line right now? People from New England. So that's moving it to a
That's a good
place where it
point.
is around 7. And I think of this game, and we talk about Tom and Bill. I'm thinking of Mac Jones. You're a rookie. The pressure to play in this spot. If he has a couple 3-and-outs early and the crowd gets anxious, I'm just saying this is a really tough spot for a rookie QB. And for all of those reasons, I like Tampa. If we took the names off of the quarterback and the head coach, it wasn't about Bill, it wasn't about Tom, and just looked at these two teams, the Bucs are by far the better football team.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes or no from each of you. Okay. I'm going to start with you, DJ. Yes or no? Do Bill Belichick and Tom Brady embrace in any way, shape, or form after this one that includes handshake or a hug? Yes or no?
Yes, but I will qualify.
I knew a butt was coming. I knew it.
It will be brief. It'll be Bill Belichick, Eric Mangini, no eye contact. I'm not even taking a charge. My feet aren't planted. We're just both moving and acknowledging each other. So it's not a story, but it's going to be a story.
Andy, yes or no? Do Belichick and Brady embrace at the end of the game?
Yes, quick handshake. That's it. Like no long talk or whatever. That'll be for when the Brady retires. They'll look back fondly one day, of course, of all their success together. But it'll be a quick handshake, go, and try to limit the storylines moving forward for both teams.
I agree. So that's unanimous. If you can find that bet somewhere,
Yeah.
I vote yes, embrace for Brady and Belichick. Okay, that's going to be a fun one on Sunday night. Kevin on YouTube wants to know, he says, morning, Kevin. Thoughts on Nyheim Hines or Javonte Williams in flex spot, half PPR? He says he has no good wide receiver options. So, Andy, we'll start with you. Nyheim Hines or Javonte Williams?
Oh, I was hoping Hines would come up. If he was a bottle of ketchup, I would pour all the Hines out today, boys. All of it. All night. Nyheim Hines is going to absolutely punish fantasy owners that don't pick him. He is set up because, listen, Marlon Mack's on his way out. They both want to trade. Jonathan Taylor's coming off of injury. Carson Wentz has 2 bad ankles. If he had a third leg, that ankle would be rolled too. Who's he going to throw? You're going to be handing it or quick outs to Nyheim Hines. In PPR, Hines, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, is the play here. And I might even upgrade him in some formats, depending on team. I might even upgrade him to RB2 personally.
The confidence just oozing from Andy in that answer. DJ, your thoughts on Kevin's question, Javonte or Nyheim?
Good morning to you as well, Kevin. I think it's Hines. Listen, I think Colts are going to be throwing a lot. I think it's going to be a game where you're going to have to score to stay in it. So I think Hines is going to be on the field quite a bit.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said just for Wentz continuing to battle through that double ankle sprain and just a lot of dinks and dunks. He's under pressure a lot of the time. So yeah, I agree. I think Hines is the way to go there too. Andrea on Facebook wants to know, which quarterback should I put in today? Russell Wilson against the Niners or Sam Darnold against the Cowboys? Just stop for a second and appreciate. Did you ever think that question would be realistic on this show a couple years back or even last year? Russell Wilson or Sam Darnold? DJ, who you going with today?
No, I didn't. There was a thought that Sam Darnold might be on his way to being a backup or out of the league, and there's a thought that Russell Wilson should have had more MVP consideration in prior years. But I think the answer is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has virtually been a top 15 to top 10 quarterback this year. Plus, as good as the revamped Dallas defense has been, Diggs has had almost as many catches as his brother has in their secondary. They're still not as good as the 49ers defense. So I like Darnold in a big way today.
It's unbelievable, Andy, isn't it? Darnold or Russell Wilson? And DJ's going with Darnold. And it is a very good question and something that's realistic that never would have seemed so in the past.
No, absolutely. I think based on matchup, I go with Sam Darnold as well. Guys, 16th best overall fantasy player for Sam Darnold. Like, slow clap for him. I had him in my Sportsnet waiver wire pickup article every Tuesday after week 1 to get him on your team if you are struggling at quarterback, or at least on the DFS side. Look at the numbers. Fantasy points, over 19 points, just under 20, 25.26. You have Dallas in what should be a guaranteed offensive slugfest. Then you have Philly, Minnesota, New York, and Atlanta. That is a stretch of games, not just for this week, but moving forward, that Sam Darnold could continue to cement himself as a true fantasy QB1. Like you said, Jesse, who the heck thought we'd be saying that?
Yeah, it's amazing. And you look at what he's been able to accomplish too with DJ Moore. He's really elevated DJ Moore this year. And that's something that, let's be honest, I don't think a lot of people saw coming. We expected maybe an improved Carolina Panthers offense, but nothing like this. And it's been a treat for Panther supporters and for Sam Darnold fantasy owners and DJ Moore fantasy owners to witness. Okay, Mike on YouTube wants to know.
It's the curse of Adam Gase. Just got to get away from Adam Gase.
It seems that way. Where's Adam Gase now? Yeah. Where Matt Nagy might be on his way to is where Adam Gase is. Mike on YouTube wants to know Melvin Gordon or Leonard Fournette, half PPR league. Deej, we'll start with you. Mike asks Melvin Gordon or Leonard Fournette.
Ooh, pretty tough. The Broncos backfield has been, almost a 50-50 timeshare. Fournette getting more responsibility as the Buccaneers coaching staff is a bit frustrated with Ronald Jones. It's crazy to think that Fournette is in a timeshare where he is the better pass catching back, but that is where we are. That's tough. I'm going to say Melvin Gordon, who is, last I saw, questionable. So make sure that he's actually going to be available. But I'm going to say Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, look, like Mike, the reality of the situation is you're asking this question because it's a difficult question to answer. There are times when you're choosing between backfields that are in pretty much a 50-50 timeshare or maybe a little bit skewed one way or another, and then it comes down to matchups. This is a situation where who knows, because Melvin Gordon could start ceding a little bit more carries to Javonte Williams. Ronald Jones has obviously been in the doghouse, but there have been times throughout Bruce Arians' history where suddenly Rojo comes out of nowhere and starts stealing carries. So that is a tough one. I agree with DJ. Andy, who you going with, Melvin or Leonard Fournette?
Yeah, I was just looking at him. Schefter did report that Gordon is expected to play ribs and lower leg. That's
bad combo.
Bad combo, but when it comes to the goal line and running back, long term, I really like Javonte Williams, but Melvin Gordon has been he's been scoring. He's not a lot, but he's been scoring. So I would still lean toward Melvin Gordon here just because I just feel Tom Brady is not going to be wanting to hand off the football today, guys. And the odd dink and dunk that to Fournette, maybe, but I'll go with Gordon. I just think Brady's going to be focusing on getting it to his wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to just see the swagger with which Tom Brady runs onto the field for the first time. It's going to be fun to watch. Dave on Twitter asks, Andy, I'll start with you with this one. Who is your favorite streaming tight end this week? Looking for a Gronk replacement. Now, Gronk, a lot of people thought he was washed. Let's face it, a lot of people thought he was washed. Then he comes out and he's looking like a surefire, fire him up, top 5 tight end one. Unfortunately, he's not going to be a part of this game tonight. That would have been fun to watch as well, going back to or playing against New England. So who are we looking for in terms of streamers this week? Let's help Dave out and give him a name.
This is a tight end I absolutely love, and he is available in still 99% of Yahoo leagues. We're going to Seattle. We're going with Will Dissly. 2 S's, folks. Will Dissly is what you're going to want to type in. Gerald Everett on the COVID list. He's not going to play. Dissly, when healthy, which has been rare over the last couple of years, Russell Wilson is not afraid to throw him the ball in the end zone and to move the chains. He's not going to break out for a 90-yard run. He's a catch and sort of fall down type of guy. But Dissly is the most widely available tight end who I think has the best upside, more so than a Cameron Brate, which I know is going to be the more popular fill-in. Based on the Gronk factor. Will Dissly, folks. Dissly. Book it.
And if Gronk is out for a number of weeks here, Andy, is Dissly the one that you're looking at to be able to roll out as Gronk's replacement for a couple weeks here? Because with Gronk's injuries, it sounds like he could miss 2, 3, even a month of action here.
Right. I would say probably Disley is on a week to week, depending
Yeah.
on Gerald Everett, because he should be back next week, Everett, but
Mhm.
you never know with COVID and all that, right? So he should be back longer term. I just think if you're at this point in the year and you need a fill in, you're going to be in a streaming zone and looking for the best matchup. So
Matchups, right?
Disley for this week. After that, we're really just going to have to wait and see till the weekend it plays out.
So, Dave, just looks like you're going to have to keep watching. We'll see you week 5. Ask the question
That's
for the
right.
tight end streamer. Deej, is there one name that you'd be willing to give Dave for a streaming tight end this week?
Well, I think there's quite a few. That really depend on how big your league is and who's available at the tight end spot. I mean, if you're worried about the amount of moves, because obviously some leagues that specifically aren't fab, you have a limit of moves throughout the year. If you're worried about that and don't want to be streaming at a position that there's such a low ceiling at, let's be honest, at tight end. One option you could do, because assuming Brait is spoken for already in your league, is throw Gronk in IR. Just take OJ Howard, just set him, act like he's Gronk, even though he's not going to give you the production. And whenever Gronk is ready, whether that's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you obviously get rid of OJ Howard. You put Gronk in. My son evidently doesn't like that idea, and it's not the best idea, but it's an option. So, but there are some good options. Dalton Schultz or Blake Jarwin with the Cowboys. Having a share of those guys. Knox in Buffalo. Many Canadian fans know that his routes run is increasing, as he gets more comfortable in that offense. And even taking a look at New England's tight ends, Hunter Henry is a guy I liked coming into this year, hasn't had a huge start. Obviously, Jonnu Smith, many people already have in their leagues, but if you're in a smaller league, he might be still available. There are some options still at tight end, but it's not the best. But there's some guys who, again, all of them pretty touchdown dependent, but could give you just enough points to keep you in the fight week in, week out until you get Gronk back.
Yeah, it really seems like because of how thin the tight end position is, it really underscores in drafts if you're able to snag a Kelsey or a Waller or a Kittle, you really are elevating your team and getting a positional advantage over the rest of your league. And it's just something to keep in mind for future drafts because it's such a thin position, and I don't see that changing in the foreseeable future. Daniel on YouTube wants to know, which Bama receiver should I go with, Devontae Smith or Henry Ruggs? Daniel flexing his college football knowledge there. Devontae Smith or Henry Ruggs? Andy, we'll start with you.
I like Devonta Smith out of Philly. Down week last week, but so was the whole game for the Eagles. There's a connection there with Hurts. You're able to line him up in different spots, which I like. You can put him in the slot. You can pop him outside if you like. Henry Ruggs is a home run shot. He's going to go 1 week, and he's going to get you 110 yards, and you're going to be, wow. Next week, he's going to get you 20 yards. I like a little bit more consistency in my fantasy football play. And while he might not have the sky-high ceiling that Ruggs does, I still think Smith is the smarter play overall here. Just from a little bit more of a level head, I think you go with Devonta Smith.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so many options for Derek Carr in that Raiders offense right now. And Henry Ruggs, I know his target share is up from previous years, but it's still limited when you compare it to Devonta Smith. So, Deej, who are you going with in that spot, Devonta or Henry Ruggs?
You know what? I think Devonta Smith is going to be the better player, but he's had a down start to his year, and the Raiders have been airing the football out. I like the matchup against the Chargers only because Derwin James is going to be busy covering Waller, and so I love the one-on-one matchups that Ruggs has. And when I look at this Raiders offense and Ruggs' eventual role in it, the Raiders offense are trying to build the Kansas City Chiefs light. Now, clearly, Derek Carr is not Patrick Mahomes, but they're giving Waller basically the same role and responsibility that someone would have in the Chiefs offense from the tight end position, which makes Ruggs Tyreek Hill. Those over the top shots. So I do think, given the fact that Carr has been more consistent, I think you're going to see a more consistent Henry Ruggs for those kill shots over the top.
Evidently a good question. Split decision on that one for Daniel. Brandon on YouTube asks, Trey Sermon, Tim Patrick, or Brandon Ayuk? I should point out Elijah Mitchell, who so many people spent
Oof.
so much fab on. It does not look like Elijah Mitchell is going to play in this game. That gives Trey Sermon yet another shot. And I don't know about you guys, but watching Trey Sermon last week, he looked pretty hesitant, wasn't running with a lot of force, but he is going to get another opportunity to show what he can do. And let's face it, the Niners traded for him, or in the draft, he's a third-round pick. They used draft capital on him, so they're going to give him an opportunity here. Is it enough for Brandon to start Sermon over Tim Patrick or Brandon Ayuk? Start with Andy.
No, it's not. I love Tim Patrick. I think with KJ Hamler out as well. Let's take a moment to appreciate Teddy Bridgewater. This guy has been so consistent. I think he's been one of the most consistent quarterbacks at a nice, even keel level. Going back to the Saints when he filled in for Drew Brees, what he did in Carolina, and now what he's doing in Denver. First 2 weeks, he was a borderline QB1 in fantasy. I'm not saying you start Teddy Bridgewater, but what that does is it makes the pieces around him fantasy relevant. And Tim Patrick has been a nice, steady guy. Out of that grouping, I'd much rather the more stable, clicking offense than San Francisco, who just seems to be a little bit all over the place with all the injuries. Over the last 3 years, get a new doctors, training staff. I don't know. 3 years in a row, guys. 3 years in a row. Everybody's injured. I think you go Tim Patrick here as the safer play. Could Sermon pop? I suppose. It's like Ayuk, but Patrick has shown it. Ayuk and Sermon have not, that they can do it consistently so far.
Deej, same question. Let's help Brandon out. Sermon, Patrick, or Ayuk in this spot today?
Same answer, Brandon. And the methodology for me is the same as it was last week and the week prior. I don't trust Kyle Shanahan. I don't trust him with Brandon Ayuk. I don't trust him with Trey Sermon. I don't trust him with anyone other than George Kittle or Deebo Samuel. And so I do know Tim Patrick is going to be either the one or second look on every single passing play for the Broncos. And so I like him a lot over the two other options.
Okay, and I do want to tell the viewers, questions are streaming in. If we don't get to your question on this stream, hit us up on Twitter. Any one of us, we will do our best to answer you before 1 o'clock or before the late slate of games. We do want to help you out, and we thank you for watching and sending in your questions. Vance on Twitter wants to know, Chuba Hubbard or David Montgomery? It's a half PPR league. Now, this basically comes down to where you decide to slot Chuba Hubbard and what you see in his production today. So, Deej, we'll start with you. Vance on Twitter asking Chuba Hubbard or David Montgomery.
I think David Montgomery, because it's going to be his show virtually alone offensively. We don't know for sure if that's going to be the case for Chuba Hubbard. Royce Freeman got some snaps after Christian McCaffrey went down. So there could be a chance that backfield is shared a little bit. And so until Chuba proves himself, but also we get a better understanding of how the Panthers are going to use him, I think Montgomery's a safe play.
Andy, Chuba or David Montgomery?
I think it's a very interesting question because it comes down to, do you trust the projection of what Chuba Hubbard could be in that offense, or are you trusting Matt Nagy? Oof. Woo, baby. That's tough. I personally, having seen, maybe it's because I saw the Bears up close and personal last week, I'm not trusting them. I'm not trusting Montgomery. I'm not trusting Nagy. I don't blame Montgomery. I blame Nagy. Give me Chuba Hubbard. I will go on projection and hope and cross all my fingers rather than depend on Matt Nagy's play calling today.
A little bit of a Canadian bias, maybe. Chuba Hubbard over David Montgomery in that spot. Okay, Teddy wants to know, and I'm going to stick with the Bears because people want to know what the deal is with the Bears. If Justin Fields can't figure it out or if Matt Nagy is still calling the plays, it looks like a fantasy wasteland. But Teddy wants to know on Facebook, half PPR league, Allen Robinson or Michael Pittman. Now, we heard you say before, Andy, that you're sitting Allen Robinson, which is a tough blow for anyone that selected Allen Robinson. Yeah. You were not expecting to have him on your bench healthy in week 4. But on the flip side, Carson Wentz is playing with 2 sprained ankles. There's going to be a lot of dink and dunking. Quentin Nelson, left guard for the Colts, is out for the foreseeable future, which obviously impacts their ability to protect the quarterback. So, Andy, Half PPR league, Allen Robinson or Michael Pittman.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Guys, honestly, as a third option, I would honestly see if you could pick up Hunter Renfrow off of waivers. He's there. I would try to pick up Hunter Renfrow and play him over those two guys personally. Now, if he is not available, you can't do that. Whatever. Oh, I'll say Pittman. Guys, I cannot trust Matt Nagy. Allen Robinson is at least Pittman in whatever convoluted quarterback state that they're in on however many feet Carson Wentz can stand on, has gotten you like 10 fantasy points. It's better than not, it's okay. I'll say Pittman. Again, I hate the situation. I would try to get Hunter Renfrow, but out of the two, I'll go with that. I want Allen Robinson to be good. Personally, I do. But I haven't seen it, and I can't trust the coaching or the play calling.
Deej, Allen Robinson or Michael Pittman?
Pittman. He's got a nice connection with Carson Wentz. I trust him to get the ball more so than I do Allen Robinson.
Andy, what was it like when you were watching the Bears struggle? And I get that you're a Browns fan. It's in Cleveland, so they're going to be celebrating. But you're watching a quarterback get sacked 9 times, and it seems like you're just watching the demise of an entire coaching staff. So what was it like? What was the vibe watching Justin Fields' NFL debut?
Well, overall it was glorious because the Browns have been that Bears team a lot over the last 20 years. I've seen that game. I've seen that, and it's nice not to be on that side of it. Now, Justin Fields, because remember, he was a star at Ohio State, so he had a lot of supporters there, people who wanted the Browns to win, but for Fields to do well. It's like do well enough, and he got smacked down, obviously. So it was a case where people were a bit down, blaming Nagy. So the vibe was still super positive and like, yes, the Browns won and all that, but also a little bit of sadness that Justin Fields ended up in that situation.
Just watching it, I know I have Justin Fields in a couple leagues, and there was such a high expectation that he was going to do well. A lot of people were putting him in the top 12, and that would mean that he was a QB1 in one QB leagues, and a lot of people got screwed because of that last week. So Jay on YouTube wants to know Antonio Gibson, DJ Moore, who we've spoken glowingly about already today, or Chris Godwin, non-PPR flex, start 1. And Jay says he's worried about Antonio Gibson's injury. He is, although, expected to play. DJ. So Antonio Gibson, DJ Moore, or Chris Godwin. Got to start with you on the DJ question.
Yeah, and no disrespect to my fellow DJ, but I think I got to go with Gibson here. I'm worried about the injury. I get it, but all you can do is make a decision based off of the information. All we've heard is that he's going to play, and if that's the case, you're going to take someone that is, firmly an RB1 over the wide receiver option. So I would say Gibson.
Yeah, the latest report is that Gibson had no setbacks during pregame warmups. These all systems go against the Falcons. Limited all week with a shin injury. So Andy, who are you going with? Andy or Antonio Gibson, DJ Moore, or Chris Godwin?
It's tough. I love Antonio Gibson. I do. I think he's a heck of a talent, and I love the whole situation there. That being said, the injury, it concerns me a bit because it's late, but we see guys overcome that. I'm going to say DJ Moore because I feel there's fewer mouths to feed in Carolina. You're still going to have what I think should be a super fun back and forth offensive battle with Carolina and Dallas. Whereas with Chris Godwin, who I still think is a great problem to have, that's your flex. Oof, heck of a team you got. Godwin, I think, is still going to produce, obviously, but you still, you have Evans, you have Brown. There's a chance all of them eat, and I think they will. But I'll go DJ Moore on this one, just based on opportunity.
Okay, so we're flexible here on this show on Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. It is fantasy, but David asked a good question. I want to get your take. Survivor pick this week. A lot of people who do fantasy cross over into the Survivor realm. Buffalo seems like a very obvious pick, which is what David is pointing out. He's asking if there was another backup Survivor option to be chosen today, and he's wondering if that team is the Green Bay Packers. Andy.
It could be. I like the Tennessee Titans over the Jets. There you go. Like the Packers, sure. What we have to remember, though, is that Pittsburgh, while the offense is terrible, the defense is borderline elite. TJ Watt's coming back, who's an absolute beast. You could ground and pound Green Bay, and if you keep it close, it just needs one pass from that noodle arm of Ben Roethlisberger to make it a bad day, right? Or Najee Harris gets hot. So you could, I don't hate it, but I would much rather, if you're not going to go with the Bills, go with Tennessee over the Jets.
So does the receiving core issue, does it bother you at all, or you're still confident just based on what you've seen from the Jets over the first 3 weeks that the Titans should still roll?
Derrick Henry's going to get the ball 40 times, and it's going to be just fine. Also, Nick Westbrook, I might be mispronouncing the last name, Nick Westbrook's dash Ekhine, Ikhine. Ryan Tannehill was talking him up all week. He said he's tough, he's reliable, he's durable. That is, and I think he's like $3,200 on DraftKings. Like as a DFS play, that is I love it as a flex play there. Not saying you want to get cute in your redraft season-long leagues. That's a bit risky, but that's somebody to watch out for just in that Tennessee game overall. But if it doesn't, just hand it off to Derrick Henry, who will smash the Jets, smash them all afternoon.
DJ, survivor pick that isn't the Buffalo Bills, because it seems like pretty much everybody's going to be in the Bills. And let's face it, like later on down the season, if the Bills are as good as advertised, you're going to want to have the Buffalo Bills around when they end up playing the Jets later in the season. That's going to really be beneficial for you in Survivor. So if you're looking for someone else to take other than the Bills, who is it going to be?
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of people picked the Bills last week as well, so they're off the board for many people still in their Survivor pools. I like the Titans. I'm weary of taking teams on the road in Survivor when you can avoid it. When upsets happen, they generally happen when the underdog team is at home. And that's why I like the Saints against the other New York team, the Giants. Again, Slayton and Shepard out in terms of that Giants receiving core. But also let's remember, this is the Saints' first real home game. They played a home game on the road because of what was happening in terms of our weather situation in New Orleans. So this is going to be really their home opener against a wounded opponent that isn't that great. So I don't feel that confident about the New Orleans Saints, but they are a team where I feel much more confident if I'm going to make a deep run picking them now against the Giants than I would against some of the interdivision matchups they're going to have later in the year in the South.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Look, at some point of the Survivor pool over the course of an 18-week season, you're going to have to make a pick that you're not 100% confident in. That's just the reality of the situation. This league is too competitive. So DJ's pick there is the New Orleans Saints. Okay, moving on. A couple more questions before we wrap. And again, if you want your questions answered, don't be afraid to hit us up on Twitter or Facebook or whatever platform you can get a hold of us, and we will do our best to answer your questions before kickoff. Caleb wants to know Saquon Barkley or Chase Edmonds, half PPR at RB2. Saquon Barkley or Chase Edmonds. Andy.
What a world. What a world we live in that we have to answer this question, right? Oh, am I actually going to say Chase Edmonds is the safer play? I am. What a time to be alive, gentlemen. What a time.
It's like the Darnold question. It's like, how did we get here? How did we get here?
And the reason is I look at yards per carry. Now, when Saquon's clicking and the O-line is decent, he's right around 5, a little bit underneath. He's averaging 3.4. I would much rather for my league, it might take something where you have Saquon on your bench and he goes off for you to have confidence to play him. Chase Edmonds, another situation where it is a much safer floor. You're getting in that either low teens, 12 to 14 range. He's not going to get you 25 points that Saquon could in his prime. I'm going to go with Edmonds. He can catch, he can run, and I hope at some point soon Saquon Barkley comes out because he's so fun when he's on.
DJ, Saquon or Chase Edmonds?
I'm right there with you. Chase Edmonds. And yeah, I can't believe I'm saying it. I can't believe it's something that is leaving my mouth. Imagine at this time last year picking Chase Edmonds over Saquon. But he is much more reliable. He has much more of a higher floor. I love the offense more. I love the health situation more. I love the offensive line more. Yeah, it's Chase Edmonds all day.
Okay, this next question has a lot of layers to it, which is why I want to ask it. I think it's really interesting. Renzo on YouTube asks for flex. It's a standard league. Curtis Samuel, who's going to be making his debut for the Washington football team, Dallas Goedert, or Peyton Barber, assuming Jacobs doesn't play. Now, here the thing is, With the Raiders, they are playing on Monday night, which means you're in a tough spot if you slot in Peyton Barber in that spot and Jacobs ends up playing, you're kind of screwed. So do you go with a guy in Curtis Samuel who's making his debut, a tight end in Dallas Goedert, or do you try one of the Raiders running backs? In this case, it would be Peyton Barber. Andy.
It is tough because it's Monday, and you're right, Jesse.
Yeah.
If Jacobs was ruled out, you'd go Peyton Barber. Gruden loves him, but we don't know. So we could easily end up with a three-headed monster in that backfield as a committee, which we don't want. Curtis Samuel, I want to know and see how he's going to be used in that offense coming off for this week. Falcons is an ideal opponent. Is he going to be eased in? Is he going to be using gadget plays? Is he going to be an actual receiver? How does this look? We don't know. So I'll say Dallas Goedert. Disappointing start to the year, obviously, where Zach Ertz sort of leapfrogged him last week a little bit. But the opportunity, I feel, should be there with Jalen Hurts hopefully having a bounce back. I believe in Hurts as a quarterback, as a passer of the football. So I'll say Goddard until we really see what Curtis Samuel is with Washington.
It's a very good point. DJ, Curtis Samuel, Dallas Goedert, or do you pray for Peyton Barber to be the starting running back on Monday night against the Chargers?
Yeah, I don't love the Goddard only because I feel like, he's not always going to be the number one look at the tight end position in that offense. So I'm now looking at Samuel and, I'm looking at Barber. And I've already said, how much John Gruden loves Peyton Barber. But you still got Drake on that offense, even if Jacobs isn't able to go. And it's still an offense that is passing first to then run the football. The questions with a game on Monday night scare me a lot. I would say Samuel is the play for me unless you come into this very specific scenario where based off the projection, you're real comfortable that you're going to win your week. And then you're just looking at, well, can I get the highest point total because in my league, there is an extra bonus for most points scored or biggest margin of victory. If you're looking at the projection and you're really comfortable that give or take the flex spot, I'm going to win because of what's going on with my competition or the fact that I'm just that good, then maybe I'm willing to gamble and wait and see what happens on Monday with Barber. But if not, and the first task is winning the week, I'm putting Samuel in the spot.
Okay, love it. Look, guys, we could talk for hours, but the reality of the situation is kickoff is now in less than an hour. Before we go, I think we figured it out earlier in the show, but I do want to know. The line is -7 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And since it's got this Super Bowl feel, I want to make sure we have our picks just for this game. The Buccaneers and the Patriots, Bill Belichick against Tom Brady. Andy, we'll begin with you. It's a spread pick. So Bucs -7 against the Pats. Who are you taking?
Like I said earlier, if it was -10 for the Bucs, I would take Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay by comfortably more than 7.
DJ, -7.
Yeah, Gronkowski inactive with the ribs makes me think about it, but come on now. Tommy Terrific is still here. Let's go.
Ding!
There it is. I'm with you guys too. Sunday Night Football. I'm expecting Tom Brady and the Buccaneers to roll. Gents, another great chat. Thanks for talking with me on week 4 of the NFL. Again, you see our handles up there. Those are our Twitter handles. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, first of all, we're sorry, a lot were coming in, but ask us and we will do our best to get to you and get you those answers ahead of kickoff. So thanks again for watching here on Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. For Andy, for Donnovan, I'm Jesse. I'll see you.